Ford, the world's largest producer of V8 automobiles, creator of the Thunderbird, now announces the completely new 1955 Ford. Ford now offers 4 exciting lines of cars, including the new Fairlane series. Long they look at that new Ford, they'll never see all the extra quality and special features that went into all parts of the car. The inner Ford is something you'll never see. And that's why we're running this 2-page spread in this week's Life. I hope you'll read it. Fact is, it tells the inside story of the 56 Ford so well, we've had this big reproduction made for your Ford dealer showroom. See all these lines? Well, each of them points to one of the inner qualities that Ford gives you at Ford's low prices.
Hey guys, Hot Rod Reverend here. Welcome to the channel. If you've been here any length of time or watched any of my videos, then you know that I am a dyed-in-the-wool Ford guy. I've owned this 1955 Ford Club sedan since I was 16 years old. Put out a lot of videos about the Y-block Ford, some things about this car, 50s Ford tech and all of that. Really enjoy it. However, we don't drink Kool-Aid around here. I've not been out in the sun too long. I do know that in the 50s, Ford had some dramatic failures when it came to their manufacturing and marketing. So let's get into it right now. The first failure I believe that Ford made was really not recognizing how the cubic inch race and the high performance war was heating up in the 1950s. It's odd to me that in 1932, with the release of the flathead all the way up to 1953, Ford dominated the V8 market. I don't know why any of the engineers, any of the marketing, anybody in high level of Ford was not paying attention to the fact that hot rodders were really after the flathead Ford, really enjoyed that engine and hot rods and performance and all. When Ford introduces the Y-block in 1954 for their Ford line, for some odd reason, it's only 239 cubic inches. It's just got a load-o-matic, which means a vacuum-only advanced distributor, so ignition's limited, no mechanical advance. It also has a crossover pipe, single exhaust. There's so many limitations with the Y-block when it comes to going above and beyond into the next generation with a limitation on bore and stroke and all of that. It just kind of seems like throughout 54, 5, and 6, Ford is chasing the high-performance market. And it's not until late in 56 and then, of course, in 1957 when Ford begins to win races, dominates NASCAR, they win Pikes Peak. Carroll Miller becomes a legend at Bonneville for racing a 1956 Ford Victoria that he drove to Bonneville from Texas and really set some great records with that car with the Y-block running 2 4-barrel carburetors. For some odd reason, Ford always seemed to be behind a little bit in this performance chase. Now, they did catch up and they did well in the 50s, but for whatever reason, with the initial launch of the Y-block, it got a bad rap in 1954. Cubic inch size, limitation on horsepower and torque. Couple that with the fact that in the Ford line, Ford uses for the 4-barrel the Holly 4000 in 54, 5, and 6, instead of using the Carter line that they were using in the Mercurys. A little bit better carburetor for performance and all of that. It's just what ended up happening. It's ironic that although Ford really did well with high performance when we think about the V8 and the launch in 1932, in the 50s, for the most part, they were playing catch-up until we get to the late 50s and early 60s with the FE design. It really wasn't until the 60s when we have the 427s and we have the small block Windsor series. Ford finally catches on that, boy, the cubic inch race is here. People are after high performance. Muscle cars are here to stay. We've got to do some R&D and get this done right so we can sell cars. Now, before I get roasted here with all the comments, that is not to say that the Y-block is not a good performer. If you watch any of my videos, you know that. We enjoy it. Tim McMaster, Ted Eaton, John Mummer, those are common names around here. A lot of different links I've given you guys. There's even a great book I recommend called Ford Y-block, A Performance History by Charlie Morris. Archives, a lot of documented fact about how well the Y-block did in the 50s and even up into the 60s with some modifications and different things that a lot of guys did. Great engine, and I hope you keep it in your car or keep it in your truck. Failure number 2 is this. Ford really had no answer for the Corvette. Chevrolet Corvettes for years, 1953 to the present day, have been known as a sports car, 2-seater, known for high performance. It took a little bit of time for that to happen because there was no V8 for Chevrolet when they first introduced the Corvette, but eventually that took hold. And it's just things of legends from the Stingrays in the 60s and so on to the modern era. For some reason, and this is coupled with the performance idea, Ford really never went with a sports car for their line. Of course, we know the 55, 56, and 57 Thunderbirds are two-seaters. They're cars of legend. They've been in a lot of movies. They've really been used a lot with 50s classic car, kind of right up there, I'd say, with the 1957 Chevrolet. Here's a 1956 or 57 Thunderbird, and those are the things that you'll see at department stores and all kinds of memorabilia. They put that kind of car in the background as kind of a decoration to represent the 50s. However, for some reason, Ford in 1958 went from the two-seater Thunderbird to a four-seater, still two doors, but a much larger car. It got boxy. Now, there's no doubt sales were good. Everything was going fine. And, well, we see the Thunderbird in the 60s, Thunderbird in the 70s, kind of more of a luxury car than a sports car. But still, when you think about the 55 and 6 and 7 Thunderbirds, we almost wish if Ford would have taken 58 and made a two-seater or even gotten into the sports car market to battle against Chevrolet's Corvette and give it a run for its money. It really wasn't until the 60s when Lee Iacocca comes on the scene and we have the Ford Mustang. And of course, that was huge, and the Mustang's been a thing of legend for many years and still manufactured by Ford today, much like the Corvette is still manufactured by Chevrolet. The third failure that Ford made in the 1950s has to be the Edsel. 58, 59, boy, 60, we think about the Edsel. Now, these days in the modern era, people love to collect Edsels. There's just something clunky about them, something, I guess, that's attractive about those big boxy lines and the design of the cars and themselves. But when the Edsel came out, it was a tremendous flop. Ford could not sell these cars. I don't know if it was just much the appearance. Maybe it was the engine family and the drivetrain that was in the car. Maybe it was some of the quirky things about the car. Maybe it was that kind of a touchpad idea for the transmission and some of the electrical gremlins that the car line would have. For whatever reason, this was a huge failure and a huge flop for Ford in the late 50s and early 60s when we think about the Edsel line. Now, for all you Edsel fans out there, we know these days there's whole clubs and meets and gatherings dedicated just to the Edsel. I've helped some guys. If you look at my website, hotrodreverend.com, I've helped a guy or two with his Edsel and different things and all of that. It's great to keep these cars on the road. Nothing wrong with an Edsel. It's just fine. But in the 50s, this was a huge failure for Ford. Now, before we get into number 4 and the last failure that I'd like to mention from the 50s for Ford Motor Company, we have to say that in the 1950s, Ford did rather well. I would dare say, we think about the 50, 51 Ford, they're very popular. We think about chops and customizations and different things. The flatheads that were in those cars were great. 52, 53 Fords are not collected as much. You get the 1954 to 57, there's just something about those cars. Maybe it's the Y block that was being introduced. The body styles changed. They got a little bit more curvy and kind of a idea with design. They still had a box and a curve, and it really wasn't quite as large as the later 50s cars. When we get to 1958, Ford has taken the Y block and basically made that a truck engine with high torque, low horsepower, and maybe just a lower engine class in some of its model lines that it had. But in 1958, Ford had a lot of problems with wiring harnesses and wiring gremlins. I don't know what it was about 1958, but it was not a good year for Ford with electrical issues. Now, granted, by this time you've got the FE series, you've also got the retractables in its second year, you have the Ranchero that's also in its second year. But for whatever reason, in 1958, Ford faced a lot of electrical gremlins in their cars. It seems like it went through every model line, not so much the trucks, but the passenger cars themselves. It could have been some of the upgrades in technology that Ford was trying to advance. Of course, we know about the retractable. We think about some things going on with Edsel at that time. Think about some upgrades that Ford is trying to do to the interior of the car, to adding this accessory and adding that accessory. For whatever reason, the wiring harnesses and the setup and all the problems of the 1958 Ford really gave it a little bit of a bad name. Now, the issues with 58 Fords are kind of baffling. You think about the history of Ford and most manufacturers. Leading up to 1955, in that model year, most manufacturers are running 6-volt systems. You get to 1956, you've got a 12-volt system in most of the manufacturers that are out there. Maybe not Volkswagen, but a lot of the domestic manufacturers went to 12-volt systems. So you got 56, 57. By 58, you'd think there'd be a lot of kinks worked out. 56 and 57 Fords were really not known to have a lot of electrical problems. For whatever reason, 1958 was just not a banner year. A lot of the cars had issues from the factory with the wiring harnesses, and it could be maybe the introduction of a relay because of added accessories. It could have been the introduction of something else that came along with the car. And of course, now these problems are no surprise. Ford was trying to innovate like a lot of the manufacturers were. So you have the second year of the retractable. You've got a lot of different things coming up. We just talked about the Edsel a few moments ago. But for whatever reason, the 1958 Ford is nowhere near as popular as 57 on down, and even the 59. It kind of gets a little bit of a bad rap because of all the issues and gremlins that were showing up in the wiring harnesses back in the late 50s. Now drop a comment below and let us know what you think. A lot of us who own Fords, we're loyal to the brand. We like the design, the styling. There's a number of things we really enjoy. You know, this channel, like I've said, I've got a ton of information about 1950s Fords. I'm not leaving anytime soon, trust me. However, just to be truthful, just to say there are some things we wish Ford would have done better, or maybe there's something that we have to consistently tackle when it comes to 50s Fords. Let us know about that in the comments below. What was Ford's biggest failure in the decade of the 50s? Thank you for joining us today. We're so glad that you guys have stopped by. We're thankful for the increase in the number of subscribers and the views and all of that. And I hope that you enjoyed the Hot Rod Reverend channel. Get on hotrodreverend.com. Pay us a visit over there. You can subscribe to a bi-monthly blog that I post about the car, about Y-blocks, all the work that I'm doing. It's free to do so. There are no advertisements on that website. I do have a website store there. You can help us and support us as you're led to do so. But we thank you for being here today. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next one.